Welcome to Quit to Win, the show where we explore the moments people have to let go of destructive pattern, limiting belief and the internal battle in order to rebuild their life with purpose and clarity. Today guest is Julia Toothacre, career coach and strategy, founder of Right the Tide Collective, host of Control Your Career podcast, LinkedIn Top Voice, and creator of Five Fees Control, or your career framework, with over 40 years of experience and thousands of coaching conversations across industry. Julia has helped high achieving professionals stop waiting for permission and start owning their path. But behind a framework and the credentials is a deeply human story. Within 8 months, Julia lost both of her parents and welcomed her son into the world. That collision of grief and new life did something that no toxic workplace or burnout could. It permanently changed everything she thought she understood about how to spend the one career she has. Today, we explore what it truly costs to stay on the wrong path and what becomes possible when loss clear away everything that was really yours. Yeah, Julia, it's a pleasure and honor having you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, Julia, within 18 months, you lost both parents and become a mother. Take us back into that particular season. Not the professional pivots, but the human reality of carrying grief and new life at the same time.
Yeah, it was such an interesting time, and as I talk about it more, it becomes this like, did I really live through all of that? And I'm here to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I'll go back a little bit before my dad passed. So maybe 2 or 3 months, I think, before my dad passed, we celebrated my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. So really big milestone. We had a big party, family came in, friends, like we saw people we hadn't seen in so long. It was just this amazing time that we had. And then within a couple months, my dad had taken a turn and ended up passing away pretty unexpectedly. And so I will say just that, that switch from having this amazing time with family and friends and celebrating their life to then him passing was very, very difficult. So not only was I having a hard time, but my mom, she was going through it because we had just had this big celebration. And so I think one of the things that we don't talk about a lot when it comes to loss, especially when it's familial loss and parents and all of that, is being a support system for the other parent. And that was something that I was not used to doing. I'm an only child, but my parents never parentified me, like I was never their go-to person for their issues. Like they had each other. And so that was such an interesting role that I had to play. So I was working full time, having to help my mom, who lived an hour away, manage not just her life, but also her grief and the emotions of that and what do we do, and so my grief really took a back seat to all of that. And so I threw myself into work at that point because I was like, I have to take my mind off of all this other stuff that I'm carrying. So then fast forward a couple months, mom's like, okay. Then I find out I'm pregnant. I'm like, okay. So now we're going through a whole different set
Yeah.
of emotions because now I'm starting to feel the grief a little bit more because I'm realizing that my dad's not going to be there to meet this child. And so I start, you start feeling that a
Yeah.
little bit. So now I'm still dealing with mom. Now I'm pregnant and I'm working full time. Like all these things going on. So have my kid, it's a great, huge blessing, whatever. The problem with all of that is my mom, mentally, emotionally is not doing well. So at this point, we're about a year removed from my dad passing. I've just had this kid. And I think that everything was very overwhelming
Yeah.
for her. And I get it. I understand. And it was overwhelming for me too. And so then I think my son was about 5 months. maybe 6 months when my mom went into the hospital unexpectedly. I'm trying to remember what it was that got her in. I think it was the flu, and then the flu turned into sepsis, and that was that.
Oh,
However, my husband and I, like, as we thought back on what was going on, we were fairly certain that she probably died more of a broken heart than anything else
mm.
because all her symptoms and everything, she should have come back from it. Like, there was no reason for her to not bounce back. So that was also hard because as an only child who just had a child,
Oh,
like, my mom had been waiting for so long to have this grandchild, and I'm like, "You couldn't hang on for us." Do like, that's how I felt about it.
yeah,
And again, through all this, I'm working full time.
yeah,
And when you talk about like the emotional weight of managing yourself, managing other people's emotions, trying to manage grief, trying to manage having this new baby and like I have to keep this baby alive and I'm trying to grieve. Like it was such an intensely overwhelming time. And from a career standpoint, I was actually on the verge of doing some really amazing work in my
mm,
career. And I was preparing to launch this program that, for me professionally and in what I was doing, it would have been revolutionary. Like, it would have allowed me to go speak, it would have allowed me to do so many things within what I was doing at that time. And I made the choice to leave it all because everything that I had gone through in the at this point it was about 2 years. Up to that point, I just couldn't do it. I was so overwhelmed, I was so drained, having to manage somebody else's life. Like, my mom passed so unexpectedly, as did my dad. I had to go through their entire life. Like, I had to go through all their stuff in their house. Like, we hadn't even done that, kind of clean out process. We hadn't done any of that because it was so unexpected. And again, only child. So I'm the only one, that can really do all of this. And I had not grieved at all because there was not time to do that. And so I knew at that point, if I want to be here for this baby and I want to give myself time to grieve, I had to change something. And so I made the choice to leave full-time work and start a business.
yeah. Oh,
That was kind of
that was
long, but
that was that was really having to lose your dad and mom or within a short period of time and having to give birth to a new baby. And yeah, and being the only child, it's a whole lot of coincidence and yeah, a whole lot of weight there. And I'm really sorry for the loss. So also you describe yourself as a high performer in the wrong culture for someone who born out, not from lack of effort, but from misalignment. Before the loss, how long have you been running hard in that direction that was quietly costing you?
yeah, such a good question. So I've had different periods of time where this has happened. So
Mm,
this happened early in my career. So post graduation from undergrad, I got into the wrong field and it took me a couple years to figure that out. Went to grad school, loved that experience, went to work in higher education in career development, and I loved it. I loved the work. And I think where I struggled was the culture that I was in. And I thought that I should be okay in that culture. And so what was happening was I thought it was me. I was like, this is my fault. I'm not assimilating into this culture. So I need to make changes. I need to adjust because there's no reason that I shouldn't be fitting into this culture because it's a culture I had been a part of previously. And it took me a long time to realize like I wasn't the problem. I was who I was,
yeah.
but there were people in the culture that appreciated that, and there were people in the culture that didn't. And what I also realized was there are places where being innovative and trying to better what is going on and trying to constantly make change, some people love that. Other people do not. And as a whole, I think the culture that I was in did not want that innovation. And I was in that position, I want to say for like 4 or 5 years before I ended up leaving the organization completely. And the only reason that I stayed was because I truly loved the work that I was doing. And I couldn't see myself somewhere else at that point, but we had gone through this big leadership change that I was actually excited about initially because they wanted to innovate. They wanted to make all these changes and I said, "Yes, this is my time. This is what I needed."
Yeah.
And then the leader of that ended up just being a horrible person, and so really tainted the
Mm,
entire experience, and then I knew I had to get out. And that wasn't like a me thing, that was a everybody. Everybody felt that
yeah.
way, so I knew it wasn't just me, but it made it really hard to stay because it became a toxic environment in a different way.
Mm, toxic environment. Yeah, in a different place. Amazing. Yeah, a whole lot. So you said also that the death of your loved ones, one change everything you thought about what you understood about life. What specifically did it change about how you saw your career? What became suddenly acceptable that you had been tolerating?
So I think what happened for me was all my priorities shifted.
Hmm.
So I went from being a very career driven person to life's short,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And I mean that's what death does. To
Yeah.
be really blunt and honest, if you've gone through it, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I think the birth of kids can do that too, but that that did not have the same impact
Yeah.
on me. It was really, the death of my parents that made me go, "Oh, life is way too short for me to be killing myself in this job." Even though I loved my job, like, I
Yeah.
loved my job, I loved my boss, I loved my team, like, I really enjoyed that job. It was such a shock to me that I even wanted to leave because I did enjoy the work that I was doing, and it was really impactful and all of that, but that's what grief does, I think that's what death does, is it gives us a different perspective on what we want from life, and that's what happened, and so it allowed us to take a step back and go, what kind of life do we want to live moving forward? And then we made a lot of changes based on the answers to that question.
What kind of life do we want? And yeah, we're making adjustments in response to that. Yeah, amazing. So also you went from 8 years in university career office to founding your own practice. What was the conversation, the internal or the external, that made starting right the tire, the fees necessary rather than just possible?
Yeah, so when I decided to leave full time, I wasn't gonna work. I was actually gonna take basically like a leave of absence type of situation. I was like, I'm just gonna take a
Yeah,
break.
yeah,
My kid was really young, and I was like, "I'm gonna take a break, raise him for a little bit, and then I'll go back to
yeah.
full-time work." I just needed time to process and heal and all of that. And I was maybe a month into being home with this baby, and I was like, "No, we're not doing this." I was like, "I can't.
Yeah.
I am not built to be a stay-at-home mom 100%, and kudos to the moms that do that, especially with multiple kids, and they love that life. Like, I love that for you, and I wish it could have been me, but I knew that because I made the decision sort of abruptly to leave in the middle of this thing that I really wanted to accomplish, I knew that I had more inside of me that I wanted to do professionally, but I didn't know what that was going to look like because I knew that my priorities had shifted. I knew that I wasn't really interested in going back into this like full-time hustle culture, which I had been in. And so I was like, well, what can I do? Like what am I going to do? And I was like, well, maybe I'll start a business, which I never thought that I would say. And it was a combination of conversations, obviously with my husband, because he's part of this as well. And then I had some really good friends who just helps talk things out, is this feasible? Could I do it? What does it look like? And those conversations were really helpful for me. One of my really good friends who's also a coach, she sat with my husband and I, and we did this really in-depth values exercise. Like, we spent a couple hours with her just talking about different scenarios for our life. Like, what do we want it to look like? Where do we want to be? Just so many really deep questions to help us think through what life can look like moving forward. And so I will tell you too, there's a lot of privilege in being
Mm.
able to have those conversations, and I'm extremely aware of that. And so this was something that, again, only child, both my parents passed.
Yeah.
So there were definitely some advantages that I had in that way, and I'm forever thankful for that because it gave me time to be able to process and do these things, right? So that started the beginning of the business. And the best part about the business for me was I got to be myself.
Yeah.
I got to build a business that worked with the life that I wanted. And so now we're like, I think I'm coming up on 8 years this fall. And that's insane to me that it's been that long, but I'm the calmest I've ever been. I'm the happiest I've ever been. And success looks different
Mm,
now than I thought it would.
mm,
And I'm just as happy with what that looks like now
yeah.
as previous.
Yeah, amazing. I think that particular sentence really got me. Yeah, success looked different compared to what it was earlier on. And yeah, it's really amazing. So you talk about career ownership, knowing who you are, what you want, and moving strategically without burning out or selling out. How much of that philosophy came from watching what happened when people do the opposite for too long?
Yeah, so my process is called Control Your Career, and this was really built out of spending so long within career development, within higher
Mm,
education, and having these conversations with people, and then coming into my own business and having the same conversations
yeah,
with people, and realizing that a lot of what was going on was people just did not realize how much say they actually have in their career. I think what happens is we follow the opportunities, or we follow somebody that we think knows us the best and is going to guide us the right way. And a lot of times it's a parent, sometimes it's, a teacher, professor. And then we end up in this like midlife, usually in your 30s or 40s, going, what am I doing? Like, what is this? And so I found that what I really wanted to do in my work, if I think about like, what do I want to be known for in terms of like the seminal work of my career, it's helping people take of their career. It's helping them realize that once they have an understanding of certain things, then they can make better decisions.
yeah,
And the career development space, especially right now, is so wildly different than it was 10 years ago. I think we have so many people in career development that call themselves career coaches that are really just trying to take advantage of people. They're trying to scam people. They're trying to get as much money as they can out of people that really can't afford it. And I don't like that. I don't like that messaging. I don't like that that is how career coaches are seen these days. And so that's a lot of the work that I do is, hey, yes, you can have a coach. Like, yes, there are benefits to having a coach, but there's also a lot of this work that you can do
yeah,
and you can figure out. And how can I help resource you for that? And so I have a book coming out at the end of this year that is really going to help empower people to have these conversations and figure it out for themselves. And that's something, even as a coach, even though that's my primary thing,
yeah.
I'm really excited about because I want people to be able to do this on their own so that they don't get stuck in that rut.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. This is really lovely, especially more like when it comes to career, having a coach and having those hard conversations, even if it might be demanding and demanding from your job standpoint and respect about the various career capital you have had over time. I think it really key, especially in this ever-changing world where AI is coming into being. A whole lot of things are changing. So those conversations are really key to stay relevant. Yeah. And I'm glad that you actually want speaking well. So you help professional find language for what they have been experiencing. And you said that is often as important as the strategy itself. Why does naming it matter so much? And what happened in a person when they finally hear the right word for what they have been living through?
Okay. So language to me is so extremely important in this
Mm,
process because so often we are not raised to understand ourselves. Our parents only know as much as our parents know.
yeah.
And some of our parents or our caregivers, they have done some of that internal work and they can help raise us that way, but so many haven't. And I think we see those stories all the time of people trying to figure out who they are. And early in my career, when I was making a career switch into career development, I did a ton of different assessments to help give me language to who I was. And was some of the most important work for me because up to that point, there were a lot of things that I got a lot of negative feedback for because I was in the wrong environment for those skills and qualities.
Yeah.
And so once I had language and I understood, oh, these are actually my strengths. This is what makes me me. And I could frame everything in a really positive way around who I was. How I made career choices changed. And so that to me is so important because I think we are always trying to fit into a box. We are always trying to fit into some type of culture that likely does not want us, right? We talked about
Mm,
that earlier with the culture I was in. Well, when I switched cultures after that experience, I went to like the complete opposite of what I had been in, and they loved me there. They everything that they hated about me in the first culture, they loved
mm,
about me in the second
yeah.
culture, which is such a whiplash because I had to honestly, I had to learn how to like myself again. And I had to learn how to lean into, yeah, this is who you are and this is why people like you. And that's okay. You're in a culture that likes you now and you can relax. And my gosh, I remember my husband saying to me when I switched organizations, he was like, "Oh, I'm so happy to have my wife back."
Yeah.
Like I had
Yeah.
changed that much, and
Mm,
I was that tired of having to try to assimilate to somewhere that didn't want me. If I had better language at the time, if I had a
mm,
better understanding, if I trusted myself more, I likely would have left a lot sooner. So I think being able to articulate who you are, why you are the way you are, and why
mm.
that's important, and then find a culture that's going to appreciate that and a manager that's going to appreciate that. I think that is the ultimate thing that you can do for your career. And sometimes
Yeah.
it takes time. It's not always going to be an immediate switch, but you'll be able to understand why things aren't working out when you understand
Yeah.
that.
Amazing. Yeah. Getting to know who you are and why you are the way you are and getting to look forward to organization who appreciate you for who you are. You distinguish between challenging workplace and truly toxic one. For someone who cannot yet tell which one they are, what are the signs that it's a time to stop trying to adapt and start planning towards living?
Well, that's such a good question. I think the signs that you want to look for are similar to the story I shared, which is
Mm,
you can change and change and change, and the attitude and the experience toward you doesn't. And so, if you are constantly trying to adjust, change your language, change your behavior, you're doing exactly what they ask, and they still are not supporting you, they're still not, helping you thrive, that's a really big sign that you're not in the right space. And there's a difference between a bad manager and a bad culture. So I experience both in different
yeah.
ways. So they have a hard time when it comes to creating relationships across the organization, or they have a hard time in meetings understanding why decisions are being made the way that they're being made because they fundamentally do not agree with what's happening in the culture or how the culture is being led. So that's one issue. Some people just have a management issue. So they're working for the wrong person, or maybe they're even on the wrong team. And in those cases, sometimes you can still move within an organization. But making that distinction is really helpful because if you do not have a supportive manager, but you have other really good relationships across the organization, you just might need to go into a different area, right? But if you feel tense every time you go into work or
Mm.
every time you get into a meeting or on a phone call and you're just like, ugh, can't believe I have to have this conversation
Yeah.
again. This is so frustrating. I don't understand why they don't get it. How come nobody is listening to me? Those are signs that you're not being appreciated within the
Mm.
culture. Nobody is hearing you, and you just might not align. And if that goes on for too long, then it turns into burnout.
Yeah.
Then it turns into a truly toxic environment for you because you're trying and trying and trying and not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
And so if that's been the pattern, that's when I would take a step back and go, okay, what is actually going on? What are the issues that I'm having? And is this worth having some conversations, or do I just need to start figuring
Yeah.
out how to move on from this?
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Are you things every time if this comes up? Yeah. I think these are really more like lovely metrics to actually get to weigh what your disposition is while you're working there and get to know when to actually more like take the lead. It's really amazing. And thank you so much. This has really been an amazing conversation. So for my audience who would love to reach out, especially for your podcast, those that want to follow your various platforms to read more of your contents and for what you offer, how can they reach out and where is the best platform?
Yeah, best place to go is my website,
Mm.
ridethetidecollective.com. You can get to my podcast there, which is Control Your Career, and all my socials and everything are there as well. If you want to reach out to me directly, LinkedIn is actually one of the best ways to do that. I love getting messages from people, and then it also allows me to see who you are as a professional, which I really enjoy. So, yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, this has really been amazing. And definitely the link to your website, that of LinkedIn link will be added to the show notes for my audience to easily reach out. Yeah, thank you, Gillian. Thank you for bringing such honest and to the heart of win to win. Yeah, you remind us that sometimes it is the most profound loss. It is one this audience actually needed today. And if today's conversation resonates with you, share this episode with a professional in your life who is performing well on the outside and quietly knows something has to change. This conversation can actually start this conversation. Remember, you were never supposed to wait for permission. Your career has always been yours to control. Once again, it's a pleasure and honor having you, Julia.
Thank you.